Hello, I'm John Higgins, contributing writer to Film and TV Now, and a warm welcome to you all. And welcome to this very special Zoom interview with a legend of independent cinema, Lloyd Kaufman. Founded in 1974, Troma Entertainment is the brainchild of Kaufman and his Yale friend, Michael Hertz, with some amazing cult offerings like Kaufman's Toxic Avenger, Trey Parker's Cannibal the Musical, Class of Newcomb High, and Charles Kaufman's Mother's Day. The alumni of Troma include the likes of Kevin Costner, Robert De Niro, Jenna Fisher, Samuel Jackson, James Gunn, and Eli Roth. And the legacy includes a library of 1,000 films, cartoons, TV shows, and shorts. The latest in-house productions include Return to Newcomb High, Volumes 1 and 2, plus the recently released acclaimed film, Mutant Blast. Lloyd, warm welcome to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, John. Thank you for supporting us.
Yeah, you're great. I want to start with a general question. I mean, when you look at your 50 years of working in the industry and looking at how Troma has evolved over the years, what would you say is the definition of the Troma brand?
Well, I think the Troma brand is known, how shall I say? It's a good question. First of all, Troma's, I think, the last independent movie studio with any longevity. This is our 47th year. People who come to see a Troma movie in a movie theater, which doesn't happen very often these days, although we're now looking for theaters in the United Kingdom for my latest movie, hashtag Shakespeare's Shitstorm, based on The Tempest. But people who know the Troma, they know they are going to be very intrigued. They're going to love hashtag Shakespeare's Shitstorm, or they may hate Return to Newcomb High, but they know they're never going to forget Mutant Blast or the brilliant beginning of the end of the beginning, Slashing Part 2. They know they're going to go on a ride in the cinema that they've never been on before. And they will, at the very least, they will have a genuine emotion, which unfortunately the mainstream oligopoly usually doesn't give you. It gives you kind of a Prosecco instead of a brandy. Troma gives you the brandy. Troma gives you the jalapeno peppers on the cultural pizza. We give you genuine bangers and mash with the after results too.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing recently. Let's talk about the online presence. I mean, I was looking at the website just now. I've actually just subscribed it. So you've got a new subscriber. I bought that today, so I'm glad to be part of it. So obviously you've, with Troma now, you've been able to offer a streaming presence to fans and newbies with some of your iconic independent films like The Toxic Avenger. So when did you decide to focus on the streaming element of the
I really apologize. Can you pause this for 1 second? Because I'm home alone and the bell rang and my wife will kill me if I don't, even though I'm in auteur cinema, I still live in fear of the little woman. Give me exactly.
Yeah, I can pause.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Lloyd. Okay, so just as we were talking, obviously, what I wanted to ask you was when did you decide to focus on the streaming elements of distribution, and what were the key challenges of getting it up and running?
Well, that's a great question. Our daughter, Lisbeth Kaufman, who now has created something called Kit Split, which is a peer-to-peer way to rent equipment. If you own a camera that you're not using, and I want to film with a very good camera, I can rent it off of kitsplit.com for about 20% of what the equipment houses charges. She was out of Yale. She got out of Yale and she was an intern, a stagiaire for a company called VHX, which was early into this idea of private platforms and creating individual platforms. And originally, we were on watch.troma.com, our website, a Troma Now website, but it was able to go to Roku. But then Vimeo bought VHX, and suddenly it became $25,000 to create an app that would go to Roku, and it's a lovely business. It's awful. But at any rate, we paid Vimeo 25,000 or 30,000 recently, and the app for Troma Now is on its way in about 10 days. Not only will you be able to go on watch.troma.com, but you'll be able to see the wonderful Troma movies, as well as our brand new movies exclusively on Troma Now through Roku and I think Apple and whatever the main platforms are. So subscribe, you can have the first month free. So you can pretty much, if you're really ambitious, you could probably watch 1,000 movies and editorials.
Okay.
I think the biggest problem for us was we wanted to pay all our employees. We only have about 8 paid people during the pandemic, which meant we had we had very little cash, so we had to wait to save our shillings to finally get this app from Vimeo, which was done, and I'm told in about 10 days the app will be up and running. So all of you lovely fans, please support Troma, because that's really now our main source of revenue.
Well, it is fun. Yeah, it is fantastic. Yeah, it is fantastic anyway. And I'm really pleased.
Glad you like it. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the films that you've put on the platform, I mean, which films proved to be the most popular during the subscribers? And are there any films that you've got in your library that you would love to push more into, that you feel that fans would love delving into, that you think are, that aren't? Because obviously sometimes there are bigger films out there in everybody's legacy. There's always films that really hit the right note, but then there are other movies that you feel, there's a movie that I'd love to, that would be great to be more of. So which films are you keen to push out there a bit more?
Interesting. For example, Decapitated. We helped finance it. We were executive producers, but we are not the creators. It's a hilarious Troma style comedy, horror, slapstick, political. It's Decapitated. It will make you laugh for sure. Also, Monster in the Closet, which we also helped finance as executive producers. And that has quite a number of stars in it, including the great Claude Atkins and Stella Stevens and John Carradine and others. And Monster in the Closet is a brilliant satire of Alfred Hitchcock movies. It's wonderful, and it's family friendly. It's not nearly as disgusting as the movies that I have written and produced and directed. Those two are wonderful, and there are tons of great discovery. Just browse, because there's so many movies that are in our collection which people don't know about, because we didn't, Michael Hers and I didn't write, direct, and produce them. But some of them are Death by Temptation, which we financed long ago, long before Boys in the Hood, long before Black Lives Matter, long before movies with people directed and written by people of color, as they say. It became the flavor of the day. Death by Temptation is one of our best movies for sure. And it just had bad luck when it came out, because racism in the video stores was rampant. So we got very good theatrical take up, and it did very well theatrically, DEF by Temptation, because the theaters, they just take a print, and if there are any problems, they send you back the print, and fuck you. The problem with the video stores is they had to buy VHS cassettes, and they were worried in the United States that the people of color would come in and burn the stores down. I mean, that's the truth. That is the truth. They're still worried about that, but we were just too early. So unfortunately, Death by Temptation did not get the audience it should have. It's terrific, though. Check it out. It's funny. It's Troma. It's Black people, all Black people, written, directed. I hope I can say that word, Black. And that it's not anything stereotypical about it. It's just, these are human beings. They just happen to be of color, and they're kind of bourgeois, actually, which is, for me and Michael Hers, that was refreshing in a day of, in the 1989, when the Black films were kind of more people with pants falling down, and a lot of words like the N word.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk a bit more about two of your current projects. I mean, let's talk about Mutant Blast, which I understand has got a Rotten Tomatoes 100% rating, and is having a screening. And then the documentary VHS Massacre 2, which highlights the seeming end of the exploitation industry in the States. I mean, what are your reflections on the movies? And in the case of the latter, what thoughts have emerged in terms of the context of where the American exploitation industry is at present?
Well, I think the point that both VHS Massacre, which was quite successful, it's a documentary, and that led to VHS Massacre 2, TOO. The basic point is that the industry has evolved into a oligopoly. Whereas during the VHS period, there were thousands of video stores all over the world featuring truly independent movies. Unfortunately, as what always happens is the elite, the cartel, the big studios, and the various vassals got upset and said that VHS was going to victimize us with a wave of pedophilia, and the copyright law would be destroyed. And then, of course, Viacom bought Blockbuster and put all the mom and pop shops out of business, so that now the video stores became basically top 20. I don't know how they were in your country, but most of the world, from what I could see, it went from lots of variety to a very small number of titles that had 50 copies of each title. Mm-hmm. So the VHS thing deteriorated. But it's a wonderful nostalgic era, and so many filmmakers and talented people were able to break into the market because it was competitive. Not today. Today, the markets are controlled by, in fact, the United States. I don't know if you on Reddit, but there's a company called American AMC, American Multi-Cinema. They're one of two theatrical chains that control the entire theatrical, that control about 99.9% of the theatrical market in the United States. And I don't know why the Reddit crowd, are you aware that the Reddit crowd has been making their stock? It's a worthless company. It's bankrupt, mm-hmm. Basically. Even the shitty Chinese owners bailed out. So it's worthless. Yet, the Reddit crowd wants to encourage monopoly. I don't get it. I don't understand that. But in any event, that's the way the industry is going. And VHS Massacre 2 chronicles this golden age of choice, a golden age of choice of movies. And if you want to see a little documentary about where it's going today, I made about a 12-minute documentary called Independent Artists versus Corrupt Media Cartel. And you can see that on YouTube. It's free on the YouTube Troma channel. And I think it's also on Troma Now. Okay. And Troma Now is only about £2 a month. Yeah. And you can see it for free for the first month. I think I mentioned that.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the other things I want to talk about.
Mutant Blast is even more interesting. Yeah. Because Fernando Ale, who I met in Spain at a Troma retrospective, his first movie, which is called Banana Motherfucker, was showing there. And my wife, the commissioner, and I saw it, and it was hilarious. It was terrific. And actually, what's his name was there too? Ruggiero Diodato was at that same festival, and found my wife extremely charming, if I can, if you can between the lines. Anyway, Fernando is a great guy, and he came to the United States. He bought his own airplane ticket, maybe swam, I don't know, but he ended up with all of us sleeping on the floor of a funeral home for a couple of months, and we made two movies, Return to Nukem High and Return to Nukem High. He was one of the chiefs of the special effects department and created a very animatronic dog that was thrown into Niagara Falls. And it's got a huge laugh, big, slapstick kind of stuff. And he sent me a script that was very Troma. And the idea was he would shoot in Portugal. where it was a lot less expensive. So we gave him some money. I gave him notes, which most of them he rejected, rightfully so, I'm sure. And we started making the movie, and lo and behold, the Portuguese government gave us more money, even though it's a Troma movie. I don't think there's any other country, including the United States of America, that would give Troma any money, any government or foundation. But Portugal did, and the movie is terrific. Fernando's on his way now to bigger films, and Mutant Blast has won so many awards. I'm sure Fernando's had to have his. Actually, you can see Mutant Blast on Troma now. I think you have to rent it for, very little, but it's exclusive. I think it's only on Troma now. Okay. But it's terrific. It's so much better than most of the warmed over turkey that's on Netflix or Amazon.com.
Okay.
Amazon Prime. Sorry, Amazon Prime.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So
the other thing, it's in Portuguese. You see, Troma. Michael Hers and I don't like to watch dubbed movies, and we've seen so many low budget movies and independent movies where they go to Spain and the Spanish actors have to try to speak English and they don't speak English, so they're kind of mimicking, and it's awful, and it's terrible. So here we have it's Mutant Blast. Excuse me, but that's a Kaufman blast. Hold on, and sorry, great blast. But the actors are really great in Mutant Blast. The lead female is hot as hell and wonderful, and they all act. They're all great actors, and it's in the Portuguese language, and our fans seem to love it. And certainly the festivals gave it so many awards that Fernando has to have his mantelpiece refurbished.
Okay, so let's talk about an upcoming one which you're involved with, which is Troma Dance, which is involved the driving experience. I mean, obviously, we've learned that the driving experience has become quite important in this pandemic. A few people have actually found that it's thrived a bit more, whereas, so what would you say makes the driving experience so special for you?
Well, what makes it special for me personally and for Troma is that the drive-ins have been booking Troma movies during the pandemic. These are movies we made 35 years ago. Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD, Terra Firma, 1999, The First Turn On, Waitress, Stuck on You, Squeeze Play, Toxic Avenger Part 2, Part 3, Citizen Toxie. All these kind of evergreens that we made many years ago have been getting rebooked. Troma Dance is a festival that Trey Parker inspired. When we all went to Sundance, he wanted to go, and were treated so poorly. He and Matt Stone had submitted Cannibal the Musical to Sundance Film Festival, and they didn't even get a fuck you letter. They got nothing back. So they figured, well, they didn't tell us not to come. So Trey convinced me to go, and we all went and slept in we had about 40 people in a condominium for 6, and a lot of pot and a lot of loving going on in there. And we were all astounded at how rude Sundance was to genuinely independent filmmakers. And I couldn't even get a ticket to anything. I was allowed to buy a $2,500 package if I wanted to see, crappy Harvey Weinstein movies. So, of course, I refused. And Trey had the idea, well, let's set up a free festival, which he did. He set up a one-movie film festival, Cannibal the Musical Festival, at Sundance, during Sundance, at the same village, same little town on Main Street. He rented a large room, and we had a big success. People loved it. And because Cannibal the Musical is a brilliant film, it's better than 90%. I would say it's better than 99%. I would say it's better than 99.9% of the movies that are shown in Sundance. And so we then thought, well, let's do it again. We'll do it next year. And we got sponsors. It was this was 1999 during the .com boom. And we set up Troma Dance. You don't have to pay to submit your films, which is what Trey and Matt had to do with Sundance. You don't have to pay to see the movies, and no VIP policy. And we had a pretty lively party for 10 years while we presented Troma Dance film festivals for 10 years in Sundance Park City during the same time as Sundance, same place. And then Troma Dance got accepted as a real festival. It's in a couple of books, reference books, and it got taken seriously. So we moved it to New Jersey, the home of the Toxic Avenger, and then we moved it to Manhattan in New York. And then during the pandemic, we got this historic drive-in in Pennsylvania. It's a very famous drive-in which has the original projection equipment that was there in 1946, and they show 35 millimeter, but they also show digital movies. And this year, Troma Dance will take place June 11th to 12th, and assuming the weather's decent, it's last year we did it there, and it was sold out immediately. Huge crowd. And lots of tents people put up. It was like a little mini Woodstock film fest. Woodstock. It was great, very warm and loving. A lot of people dressing up as Toxie and Sarah and Sergeant Kabuki Man NYPD and Dolphin Man. It was really a wonderful cosplay center, and a lot of people selling Troma merch and trading Troma merch, and real Troma. The closest thing I can think of is the Insane Clown Posse does a convention once a year. I can't remember what it's called, and I keep meaning to go, but they tend to do it in the summer when I get a lot of gigs.
Okay. Well, one final question, Lloyd, and thank you so much for everything. You've shared some really interesting things. What are you most proud of as a filmmaker and as the co-creator of Troma?
Well, I think as a human, I'm most proud that I've had the same partner for almost 50 years, Mr. Michael Herves. We've never had a written contract. Now we used to direct together, and the Toxic Avenger we co-directed, and Michael takes no credit for it, but he's very averse to publicity of any sort, and I'm a narcissist, so I'm very happy to fill myself in and get the credit, but he deserves most of it. And the other thing I'm proud of is that Michael Herves and I have had the same wife for about 50 years. And I don't mean we've had the same woman. He's had his wife, Morris, and I've had my wife, the commissioner, New York State Film Commissioner, Pat Sweeney Kaufman. We've been married for almost 50 years. So I think in the big picture, and I have one or two friends, really, really, really good friends. So in that regard, I think I'm most proud of that. Regarding Troma, how lucky have I been? I've been able to make movies for 50 years, totally out of the mainstream. I mean, the New York media, New York City, which is where most of the movies have been made, we own a building, we pay real estate taxes, we pay our payroll. We've been paying people since 1974, most of whom would normally be on welfare. We've been paying, we've been making movies that are extolled by the Kennedy Center, British Film Institute, Cinémathèque Française, you name it. I've been invited all over the world, except here we're ignored, and yet we're still around, and we owe it to our fans. And I think the fact that our fans have really fueled the continuance of Troma during this period of being out in the desert. Real independent filmmakers are basically wandering the desert. The ones who are willing to conform and be woke and be safe, that's usually what you see on Netflix and Amazon Prime. And you certainly don't see anything particularly stimulating from Warner's or those people, unless you're into Cruella or one of those things. And I'm sure those are wonderful films, but I have Cruella in my own existence.
Okay. Well, that's a great note to finish on, Lloyd. I want to thank you so much for your time and insights into the filmmaking process. It remains for me to say generally that we must support independent cinema and support the filmmakers, support the cinemas, both mainstream and repertory, and the drive-in Troma Dance Festival, which is coming up on June the 11th to 12th, as Lloyd mentioned. Most of all, check out Lloyd and Troma's official social media feeds online by the official social media channels. Check out Troma Now, watch.troma.now. And thanks one and all, and we'll keep the faith while staying safe. And thanks again, Lloyd.
Well, enjoy I imagine now you'll take your clothes off, and it looks very private. You jump right into the water there and snorkel and enjoy the beautiful environment that you have. And again, thank you to the Troma fans all over the world, especially in the UK. Hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm is my return to the Bard after Romeo and Juliet. And I'm looking for theaters in the UK so I could go there and do a little tour. So if anybody wants to curate a hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm, my version of The Tempest, I could show up if we get 2 or 3 screens.
Okay, well, that's great. Thanks very much, Lloyd. That was much appreciated, and I wish you well for the coming months, and congratulations on nearly 50 years of work with Troma.
Well, congrats to you, John, and should you find yourself in Manhattan, come visit the Troma team in the beautiful Troma building, which is a dump, and you'll meet a lot of enthusiastic young people who love cinema.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Lloyd. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, John.